Again, welcome. I'm going to speak specifically about the quantitative analysis FRQ. So if you watch the screencast on the content application, this will be some repeat information. So concerning the AP exam, the College Board has communicated that it will be completed remotely from the comfort of your own home. So make sure you have a spot where you know there won't be distractions, where you've been doing work so that you've practiced doing work in that particular location. It will be helpful. It will focus on the first 3 units of instruction. That is the sequence published by the College Board and not the sequence that we've been using in Edina. Any published study guide will follow the College Board sequence if you need a reminder as to what the content of units 1, 2, and 3 were. Finally, there will not be a multiple choice section. The exam will consist only of FRQs. Given that, let's hone in and understand where we can easily earn some points. The quantitative analysis FRQ is typically worth 4 points. Last year, Edina's average on this type of FRQ was 2.5. The global average was 2.3. Again, your teachers feel that you are well prepared for this type of FRQ, but let's take a closer look. Part A asked you to describe a trend in incumbent re-election rates over time. It is asking you to read the data in the graphic. The answer will be in the visual. The trick is to use both variables and the title of the graphic in your response. Thus, your response should include a percentage and a specific time period. Ideally, the time period would have been, you said in your response, 1972 to 2012. In terms of the title of the graphic, incumbent re-election rates is your percentage, and 1972 to 2012 is your overtime. Okay, so here's some specific data. On A, just want to point out that students who did not earn a full point often did not describe the trend over a definite period of time. For example, a trend in the incumbent re-election rates is the gradual rise in the incumbency rate of the Senate. Okay, there's no over time in that statement, thus you would have lost the point. Or use the phrase over many years. Part B. Okay, make sure you skip a line and move on to B. Remember, B asks you to do 2 things. You will need to do both to receive this point. For B, use the language. Say a similarity in incumbent re-election rates between the House and the Senate is, or a difference between the House and the Senate in incumbency re-election rates is. Okay. Here's the data for you. People did a fairly good job on this. Students who did not earn a point described incorrect, non-factual information. They might have mixed up the House trend with the Senate trend. Okay, if your data is incorrect, you will not receive that point. And if your data is incorrect for B1, then they will assume that the conclusion you draw is also incorrect, and you will lose the point for B2. B2 asks you to draw a conclusion. Is your conclusion should be about something not represented directly by the data in the graphic. Use the language. So start with one can conclude. It's very helpful to the evaluator that you're now addressing that second point of B. Here's some information on what students did correctly to earn the B2 point or half point. And then here's some information on why people would not earn the point. Most people who lost the point just repeated the data that was already represented in the graphic. All right, moving on to C. C asks you to explain, and make sure you recognize the verb explain. It's highly important to actually getting the point. Explain means you need to identify, describe and or define, and go further. In this case, start by defining incumbency advantage. Okay. Then identify and define or describe a source of incumbency advantage. Then explain how it gives an incumbent an electoral advantage. This means you have to mention elections and or voting. Finally, conclude with an example. Even if it is a hypothetical, a good example will clarify your thinking. It might get you a point you otherwise would have lost. So when you see the word explain, that verb, you think there's 4 things I have to do. I have to identify, I have to define. You can replace define with describe. And then you have to go further. You have to explain and then end with an example. D is the same. Okay, again, it's an explain. You needed to identify a factor that would give a challenger to an incumbent a better chance to win. You needed to describe that factor, explain how that factor increases a challenger's chance to win an election and or receive more votes. Again, end with an example, even if it's a hypothetical example. It'll clarify your thinking and help you pick up that point. All right. Hope that's helpful to you all. If you're rewriting, get them in and use that information to help you. And I will talk to you all later.